I would say that under the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, you have power over tariffs. And the problem has been is successive Congresses have delegated so many powers over tariff setting to the president on the assumption that the president will basically act in the national interest and tend to lower tariffs and reach trade agreements, that Congress has given up its authority. So it's time for Congress to stand up and assert itself a bit more on trade. Their constituents will be hurt by many of these measures, and yet the Republicans seem to be very quiet about it.
How will they affect that reassertion? Do they need the judicial branch to support them, or do they just sit down with a beverage of their choice? What do they drink at Dartmouth? It's like Labatt's?
Yes,
they
exactly.
have like Labatt's. Yeah. Doug Irwin, do they have a Labatt's with the president and say, this is too much?
I think you have to look back to the first Trump term when President Trump almost pulled out of NAFTA. And he was convinced by his Secretary of Agriculture and a few congressional allies that that would not be a right move, that he should renegotiate it because they were pointing to the harm that would be done to his voters, farmers in the Midwest, manufacturing firms in the upper Midwest that depend on exports. And so that sort of helped convince him in terms of a longer run solution of changing legislation to empower Congress more. That's sort of a long run solution to what is now a short-term crisis.
Doug, how do we think about tariffs in a global, intertwined economy? It's not like the 1800s where we imported a relatively small number of goods. We exported a relatively small number of goods. In the global economy, the tariffs, how do they work?
Yeah, you're right. It's actually very different than it was a century ago. A lot of trade a century ago was sort of in final goods or in very basic raw materials. And now what we have is integrated supply chains and international production networks. So the web of commerce and the degree to which firms in all sectors are sort of bound to the global economy in some way is so much more extensive today than it was even 50 years ago, let alone 100 years ago, that tariffs have much more ripple effects throughout the economy. And these proposed tariffs will rip apart North American supply chains and be quite extensive in terms of the reach that they will have.